Au nom de Dieu,
In the name of God,
je suis très content
I am very happy
d'avoir
to be here,
accepté l'invitation
to have accepted
de Monsieur Hollande.
the gracious invitation extended to me by
Nous trouvons aujourd'hui, grâce à cela,
the President of the French Republic, Mr. François Hollande, thanks to which invitation we find ourselves in Paris today. We have had very good negotiations with our ministers, with the French ministers and their Iranian counterparts, with French companies as well. This took place this morning within the framework of the MEDEF. Doubtless, the conversations we've had with major companies such as Airbus and Total are very promising. And in particular, I want to take this opportunity to thank the French government for its very warm welcome, and the French people as well, for the very warm welcome extended to us. And I wanted to stress that France and the French people have a privileged status in Iran and with the Iranian people. Iranians know that the French government and the French people welcomed Imam Khomeini for several months in 1978. And French culture, the role played by France at that time, is an essential point for the Iranian people. So the negotiations and discussions that we have had between Iran and the 5+1 were very important. And in that framework, France played a preeminent, highly active role. Those negotiations are of the highest importance in order to be able to show to the world that the strength of diplomacy is very mighty, and that through discussions and negotiations one can succeed faced with highly complex problems and come out victorious. So now we are in a more favorable situation, sanctions having been lifted, and I can indeed assert that we will be true to our commitments, on condition, of course, that the other side also keep their promises and commitments. We discussed all of these things today with President Hollande. And we're very confident, thanks to the good relations we've had in the past with French companies that once were in Iran. I'm sure that they can start working with us again. The past few years that we have lived through must be recovered. We must catch up. And the Prime Minister was able to sign a few contracts within MEDEF, and this afternoon, in the presence of President Hollande, several agreements were signed. All of this bears witness to the fact that the government and the private sector in France want to work with us, and it is through this common work that we can uphold the interest of our two countries. And as President Hollande has said, through these negotiations, through investment in Iran, the objective is to create employment for our young people, to foster the future of our youth, and develop trade in the interest of our two countries. Now, obviously, our cooperation will not just be confined to the economic area, also in the scientific area, in the cultural field as well. In the past, we've already had more than 100 years of cooperation, in fact, between our two countries in scientific and technological areas, and our two peoples respect each other. For our peoples, it is important that they are allowed to travel freely and visit the two countries and acquaint themselves with the historical past of the two countries. The French going to Iran, becoming familiar with the history of Iran through their visits. For us, this is very important because we have so many monuments in our country which are well worth a visit, and these relations between our two peoples is a very strong point in our negotiations. Obviously, attention must also be given to preservation. The main important subjects discussed in COP21, preservation of the environment. This is essential for all the world. This is something to be completely stressed. And we wish to continue working with our French colleagues hand in hand in order to endeavor to protect the environment as far as we can. Now, the problems of the region are also important for our two countries. The countries in my region have a history of friendship with France, but also with Iran. Lebanon, for instance. We obviously hope that Lebanon will be able to leave behind it this situation of instability. Iran is a friend of the Lebanon, as is France. Syria is also a very important country to us. The Syrian people have now, many of them, left their houses, left their homes. Syria is plunged into a climate of instability, and we therefore must help the Syrian people to enable them to work for the future for their country and take the necessary decisions for their own future. And speaking about Iraq, the unity and integrity of Iraq is highly important for us. And for Iraq and Syria, we therefore must fight against terrorism in these two countries. We must stand side by side with the Iraqi and the Syrian people so that they can fight against the terrorist splinter groups. The security problems in that region are key, and we hope, in spite of our differences in the region, for instance, we would like the conflicts between Iran and Saudi Arabia to be able to be solved diplomatically through negotiations. There's one point that on both sides we supported today strongly, and that is to say the fight against terrorism and extremism. We must remain extremely vigilant and active in this area, exchanging intelligence between our two countries, exchanging policies, and in other areas as well, particularly in the field of culture, so that we may continue working against the very root of terrorism and return to a situation of security for all of our peoples. Human rights is also a very important point for us. We would hope that throughout the world all populations can enjoy the same rights, and that includes migrants as well, that we're all on the same footing of equality and all able to profit from the same riches. Therefore, we must fight against the roots of terrorism, and Iran and France agree on this point. Thank you very much for your attention.